Alright, so I have all these meshes, and I was running into some errors with the whole shading issue within the UDK compared to the shading within Maya. So here I got my textures, and if I turn on my lights, let's see, I got this light source. I'm just going to rotate it a little bit. So I got viewport 2.0 on, and in viewport 2.0 I have the pre-space ambient occlusion enabled with the following settings. This mimics the shading within kind of the UDK. It's got that ambient occlusion that shows up. It's not a perfect match, but it works pretty well. So let's export a couple of these and see if there's any shading issues that happen. Hopefully there is, so I can show you how to repair them. Let's start with this mesh right here. Now with all these meshes, they're individualized. So the first thing you should probably do is just like modify center pivot for all of them, and then for each one of these you're going to have to drag it to the middle of the Maya scene. You'll have to reassemble them back into the UDK. 4 on the keyboard. So here I have a grid spacing of 132.1, and that closely mimics the UDK layout. And the size of a door is what? 3 times 2. So in this case, this is 1/2 of that, just about. So if you look at the window, it's about 2. Alright, X on the keyboard allows you to snap this into the center. And I can quickly almost snap like all of these just into the center of the scene here. There we go. It looks like that one escaped. That one still needs a little work, but I just want to get it in the engine, kind of look at it for a sec. Alright, so File, Export Selection, Square Box, and let's just go File, Export Selection. I'll do most of the settings in here. So I'm going to kind of leave the stock settings alone, except for the one down here. Embed Media. Okay, make sure that's on. And we'll call this Wall 1. We're going to export this into the UDK under a Work in Progress directory. I made a folder called Steampunk Building, and that one right there. I still got to add some brass and little whatnots around there to make it more steampunk-like, but okay, so I got that mesh. It's now ready to be imported into the UDK. Okay, I never start with one of these scenes. I always like going to new level. I found out that these scenes, the lighting really sucks in them, and it's just so much easier to make new lighting than it is to actually repair those lightings. I'll make a new train for everything to set down on. Turn this up a little bit so I can move a little bit faster. And the only thing I want in this level is a CH Iron Guard Mail. want that as a skeletal mesh. I can hit home, take me right to him, drag him up, and then hit end. That will drop him to the floor. Cool. And then I'll go in and get a dominant directional light. I like using those to start out with. So lights, directional light, dominant directional light. Drag one of those out. And I'll just rotate that just a little bit at an angle. Don't ever have a light straight on, and you can kind of see the shadow of that guy. Now I got kind of like a default 45-degree angle. Okay, content browser. Let's go in here. Import. Here's my work in progress. Here is my steampunk building, and here is my window 1. Okay, on this one, I'm going to go down, and I'm going to make sure I import materials and import textures. And I'm going to write a new package called 01. For example. Hit OK. So as long as all the material and the textures are assigned there in Maya, this should import all the materials and the textures and everything else here into the UDK. There we go. Now I'm not going to save this just yet because that's one of the problems. So I'm going to go in here, drag one of these bad boys out. Find the front face of it. The other way. Drag it up a little bit and hit end. There we go. So it drops it to the floor. Okay, so the first thing is students don't do is this. So they'll build lighting and it's going to look like junk because it really does have UVs that make it look good, look okay here, but it doesn't have anything to do with light mass. So the first thing we have to do is double click static mesh and look at the setup of this thing. Okay, if I got my UV channel 0, display it, I got this. Okay. Now these are stacked UVs. They work on the principle of the material is being assigned to the individual objects. Okay. Now, that will not work with light mass. So, over here I can go to generate unique UVs, and then I can go in here and say create new UVs for 0 to 1. And this is going to be put onto the 1 channel, not 0. Down below, hit apply. Okay, so let's go in here and just rebuild the lighting and see what happens. Hopefully it looks like junk. kinds of bad stuff here. We'll address those here in a second. Oh yeah, look at that. Horrible. Absolutely horrible. Okay, so the first thing is you should always have a light mass importance volume, and that is located under. So we go here to split. We're going to take this mesh and hit home. That way it's centered within all views. Then I'm just going to page out to find this guy. And I'm going to place it over the top of him in all views. And I'm just going to grow it out. And right here, I'm going to just show reset to default. That way I can see what's going on here. Okay, it's probably bigger than it needs to be, but we're just going to make it. So add volume. Light mass importance volume. And if you go and move that over, you now have it. Okay, it should be there. Now that's going to do very little to this, the aesthetics of this, but I'm just going to build lighting and show you what it does. Now it just makes it a little bit faster at looking like crap. And it brought up the swarm agent on my other monitor now. Okay, good. Still has errors, but at least it's got the right engine in here to help compile it. Alright, so the thing is, back in Maya, we have a thing called normals. And right now the normals are just set to whatever default, and what we're going to do is go like this. Normals set to face. Okay. Also, it's really good to get rid of your history. Look at this. All this history here. Modify, center pivot, edit, delete by type history. And then I like to do a modify freeze transformation also. That gets rid of all the zeros here. And now everything is so clean on this one mesh. Okay, so I could just export selection right over the top of it. And then I can go right back into the UDK, go to my content browser, click on it, right click, and say re-import static mesh. Now it looks like nothing much changed, but let's go in here and go build lighting. Same settings. Now you can see that there's only one error, and the lighting looks amazing on it. So what's the one error? Static mesh has invalid light map coordinate index. Okay, let's look at that. Double click on the mesh. So here's channels 1, here's channel 0. Show UVs. You can see channel 1 does not exist. Okay, remember I imported this back in, so I'm going to have to generate unique UVs again. There we go. Got 0 and 1. 1's going to look a little wonky because it's dealing with light and how light is processed on the mesh. Again, let's do a little build. And I'll show you one other thing that you could change to make it look good. Okay, no errors, but look at what happened. Looks wonky again. What's wrong with it? Well, if you look over here, and let's double click on it again to reload it. The light map resolution is only set to 32. I'm going to put 128 because it's a complex mesh, meaning it has stacked UVs and then it has lots of little itty bitty pieces in here. So whenever you got that, it's smart to get in here and say 128, 256, somewhere like that if it's got itty bitty little parts. Okay, so let's go over here and close that out. There's no saving. And I'll show you one last thing. So that looks a lot better. Look at that. Much better. Alright, now on import of Maya, sometimes this happens. So I'll show you one more thing. When you export selection, sometimes down here there's a smooth mesh option. Okay. Now, sometimes you want smooth mesh, sometimes you don't. In this case, I don't want it. These are all little errors, or little things that you have to kind of look out for. Not really errors, just check marks and check boxes that you miss. Okay, whenever it does wonky stuff like this, you just leave it alone. There we go. I have to re-import mesh. Double click on it. Check your UVs. Generate unique UVs. Okay, good. Better. Very cool. And as you get more and more resolution on complex meshes like this, it'll look better. Again, don't do that for every mesh. You would only do that for things that are made of little tiny parts, and each part has to have its own representation of light mass. So if you double click on here, I'll show you under UV, see these little tiny parts right here. So if these don't have enough resolution in these little parts, the light mass will never look good. Alright, so those are things that you can do to improve your import of meshes and some of the problems that occur during the transfer between Maya and UDK. Enjoy.